The challenge of having offshore talent is you can't go knock on their door and find them. It's like they're just not coming in for the day.
Here's my thoughts on that. It's not a offshore talent problem. It's a leadership problem.
True.
If a team member or an employee is not delivering, then it's a leadership and management problem because expectations were set up front. Don't hire people when you're drowning. It's like learning how to swim when you're drowning. You wouldn't want to learn how to swim when you're in the middle of drowning or in that situation, right? It's the same thing with new hires. Don't hire people when you're buried with work. When would you actually have time to train the individual and you're just throwing them into the deep end? Sink or swim. Good luck. Right? It's very difficult. Don't wait until, oh shoot, I ran out of time. Start with the moment you're quoting a project, right? The moment you're putting together that proposal, build that contractor in, build that offshore talent in, right? And build in that time in the get-go. And when you do that, and you keep doing that, and you're building that system, yeah, sure. Are you gonna make as much money? No, you're not. But who cares? It's not important right now. The important is you not having to do the work. You have kids, but now with 3 kids, like I don't have that much time. Like the kids suck up a lot of my time. So I have no choice. We have a ton to cover today. All right. So all about all about offshore talent, benefits, challenges, best practices, and some additional bonus content too near the end. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So who the heck am I, right? My name is Dave Lee. I'm the founder of Design Source Media, which is a web agency. And I'm also the founder of DSM Talent, which is a staffing agency that we help agencies find talent in the Philippines. I've been running my agency, like my web agency, for over 13 years now, and I currently manage a team of 14. I'm a husband, a father of 3 kids, soon to be 4. I know I'm crazy in June, so so currently 3. So that's who I am. And so, first question for everyone here, what offshore talent is currently part of your team? And you don't have to say out loud. If you don't want, you can put it in chat. If you don't have any, just say 0, just me. That's fine too.
I have one VA from Kenya.
Oh, from where? Kia?
Kenya, like South
Kenya.
Africa.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Interesting. Okay. Nice. Anyone else? No? Okay. So, so that's perfectly fine. I started with 0. Well, now I'm at 14. So, yeah, it's everyone starts somewhere. And so in this session, we'll cover the benefits of hiring offshore talent, specifically in the Philippines, because that's what I'm really, really familiar with. So Joshua, I know you have one talent in Kenya, and if you're looking at hiring elsewhere, like South America or I mean, technically even UK I've seen others hired in hired in the Ukraine, in Pakistan and India. This
Higher.
will pretty much work. Okay, it's really understanding the concepts
It's
and
not
and
on
what
me.
what to look for.
Right now it goes this way.
Oh, let me mute you for a second. All right, so let's continue. Benefits of offshore hiring. Why offshore hiring talent can help you build your business. So one of the super obvious ones, right? Why we do it is cost savings and scalability, right? It's just let's be honest, it's cheaper. And in comparison, I'm in the US, uh, uh, it's 3 to 1. I can hire 3 uh, Filipino talent for 1 US hire. Okay. And and that's the reality of things. And so I also built a tool to kind of give you an idea of like price comparisons. So think of it this way. We're in this case, we're comparing contractor to full-time hire. All right. So, for example, a project price. For us, web projects usually start around 5 grand, but it could be if you're running social media campaigns, a marketing campaign, whatever project, roughly around $5,000. Or this per month. Sometimes you might have a retainer, it's 5,000 per month, or it could be less, it could be more, right? So I'm just rough ballpark, $5,000 price point. You're doing 3 projects a month, okay? Or just in general, 3 projects. And so this is simple math, 15,000, right? 5,000 times three. Then for contractors, this is how I look at it and how I do it. And we sometimes periodically do have to pull in contractors. So I look at it from a budgetary standpoint. I would say of that $5,000 or the total projects, the $15,000, 40% of it will go to our contractors. Okay. So the 60% will be internal. So it might be for me or, like not directly to me, but like it might be my administrative staff, anyone that's in-house, right? Non-contractor related. So that's a $6,000 contractor expense. So which that's the profit of 9 grand. So with a with a team, on the other hand, same thing, 15,000. The difference is the average full-time hire maybe $1,600. So you multiply that by 3 hires. So my recommended hires are an executive assistant, if and usually 2 technical hires. So if you're running a marketing agency, it might be someone handling social media or design and development or a video editor. And usually it's like 1 or 2, okay, of those technical talents. Or you might have a CSM or a project manager as part of that pool. So now your expense is $4,800. So that's at 3 projects. So you can see the difference here. Uh, so I'll just take this minus this. So right now it's a net positive of 1,200. So if you go down in projects or you lower so let's play with the numbers, right? If you go down in projects, yeah, you're not going to like be as profitable. But here's the thing, there's still a big difference. Okay, that's okay in my book because there is a big difference between a contractor, someone working for you for project by project basis um, or hourly, but still contractor work versus someone that's working for you full time, that's part of your team, right? Can anyone um, share like what do you think are the big differences in what you see contractor versus full time hire, like someone part of your team?
Contractors, you can't really like tell them what to do. It's just like,
Yeah.
here's a video, edit it, but they could do it at
Yeah,
3 a.m. and when you're not available to talk to them or anything. So I think full
exactly.
time, you kind of have more control of them and their workflow and communication and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you have less control, right? Of the process of creating that output. Okay, anything else?
Yeah. I would say just to add on to that, it's just like the level of buy-in that they have. And
Hmm.
so, they're a contractor, they might have like 5 other clients, and so you might not necessarily be a
Go.
priority.
Cool.
And so that can sometimes reflect in their work. And so having someone full-time, you can kind of like, they're bought into your processes, and everything about, your culture and your business.
Yep. Exactly.
I guess
Anyone else?
I'd add
Yes.
if you have a full-time one, then on the other side is there it comes with a little bit of pressure for I got to make sure that there is enough work for me to justify having the
Mm,
person full-time.
exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that is a con, right? You are now responsible for
Right.
for someone's like future, right? They're to put food on the table for them, right? So you're responsible for that. Absolutely. And with that, you want to look at, so let's go a little more extreme, right? Let's just go like you only have one project, right? One project. So even at that point, with these numbers, you're still like in the net profit, right? So thank God, right? You're still a little, above water. But I want you to think of it this way. When you're building your foundations and you're looking to scale, right? And it's a core service that you know really well, and you think it's going to go well, I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to find one client at 5,000 or generating $5,000 in revenue. Okay. So that risk is mitigated by having offshore, right? If you're onshore, yeah, you're paying like a lot more, so your risk is quite high, right? You increase your risk. But here's the thing. Now let's go on the other end, right? We start going into 4 projects, right? We started at 3. So now it's quickly starts expanding into a much greater difference in your net profits. Okay. But usually what happens is what I would recommend is I'm not saying, okay, don't hire local at all, don't hire. I would say at that point, it may make sense to hire, let's say, a creative director, maybe a more upper management role, or someone closer to the client interaction. You can still start now. You have because right now, you as an owner, you're doing that, right? Eventually, you want to delegate that. You want to get that off your plate. So now, guess what? If you're cranking out 5 projects at 5 grand per project and you have an extra $5,200, that's a W-2 salary in the US. Right now, at that point, you can pay someone full-time locally to help pretty much do what you're doing, that because your offshore team can't do. Okay. But I would say in general, your offshore team can do pretty much 80% of what your agency needs. So I just want to kind of show everyone this tool, and just playing around with the numbers. Kind of like I look at the numbers, right, to make the decisions. So here's some cost comparisons, right? You got full-time EA in the US versus full-time EA locally, or sorry, in the Philippines. So local versus offshore, 5,000 to 1,450. You got video editors, local video editors, 5 grand, in the Philippines or offshore, 1,700 a month, right? So crazy difference. Another benefit would be access to global expertise, right? You're not locked into, oh, I can only find someone that has this level of skill set that can do this, and you're restricted locally. Like you're basically trying to work with your non-dominant hand with only one hand. Okay, that's what it feels like when you're working just local. Like you're only, I've seen plenty of agencies. Like one of our agency partners, I've been working with her, she for many, many years, and she's like she's like, no, I gotta hire local. Yeah, I want to support local. I'm like, oh, okay, okay. And then she got to the point where like, shoot, I can't find any help. I need help and I'm getting buried. I have all this opportunity and no one can help me execute. So then eventually she's like, Dave, I see your team works. She would subcontract a lot of the web projects to us. So she's like, okay, I see your team works. A lot of my friends, agency buddies have told me to do this. So she finally did it. She's like, wow, why didn't I do this earlier? Right? Like I'm all for supporting local. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm in Michigan. I love, the community, the state, but at the same time, like you have to sustain yourself and also what the market bears, right? In reality, if you start hiring local, you have to charge local rates. And if your clients aren't able to pay local rates for the services, then there goes your business, right? And then ultimately you end up hurting your local community anyways because you can't help them let's say you're offering marketing services, you can't promote that restaurant or that local business with your services, right? So here's an example, okay? And this is a real resume for an executive assistant, okay? And this costs about 1,400. And you can see here, like this is the level of expertise that we're bringing on. It's not that they just have a high school diploma, right? They have a bachelor's degree, in this case, in journalism, in a very prestigious university in the Philippines. Okay, they have many, many years of EA experience. So in this case, this EA was working and supporting a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, for a marketing company in the Netherlands. In this case, it's an Australian pharmaceutical company. She was an exec for, a virtual assistant for, right? She was handling as a property manager for over 20 plus rental properties. So you see like this individual is not like, oh yeah, right out of college or right out of school, like plenty of experience. She is I would say a veteran as an executive assistant, right? Now, not every resume is like this, right? You're going to see a wide range, but I'm saying like if you look at the same resumes locally, right, it may not even be this qualified, right? And there's no way you can, if you even offer this, right, they'll think like, okay, I'll go work at McDonald's then, right? Uh, but here's the thing: don't think from our perspective. And some might say, "Oh well, $1,400. What are you doing? Are you like paying uh your team like peanuts?" That's absolutely not true. It's all about cost of living, right? I live in Michigan. I don't live in LA. All right, thank God, right? I mean, like my heart goes to all what's going on with the housing and the fires in LA right now. But I don't live in California, and the cost of living is insane, right? For the same house, it's like twice, if not three times more expensive. So cost of living in the Philippines or in Kenya or in India, it's different. It's a lot lower. And so for $1,400 a month, it is above their average like salary of what they can normally make anywhere else locally for them. So it's a huge bump in their living, right? Um, Here's another example. This is a video editor that would be $2,000 a month. Okay, very senior. You can see here, he was a senior lead post-production specialist, a senior sound designer, audio engineer, video marketing strategist, a creative director role. Okay. Uh, so he worked for a company in Houston, Texas. He was a senior lead post-production editor as the media production department. And he also he managed a design team to streamline the creative direction, and he managed the production system. He worked for looks like he worked for a Philippines company. He worked for Grant Cardone in Canada. So you can see like I mean, some of these places we're kind of familiar with already, and all the tools that they're familiar with. He has full references. I mean, $2,000 for this level of experience and caliber, that's a steal, right? So so that's the thing, like, why aren't you finding offshore talent, right? Because if you're looking at competition, what your competitors are doing, what other, marketing companies are doing, and not even marketing, like what even like large corporations are doing, right? They've been doing this for many, many years. Us as small agencies, small businesses, we're just starting to do that. Another example, social media manager, right? 1,800 bucks a month. Um, you know, bachelor's in physical education and physical science, social media manager, been freelancing again here, was a VA, certificates like Google certification, another VA certification, all these other SEO certifications from these different academies. So, and you can kind of see another example in this case, Daniel here. This is social media manager, 1,800 bucks. So they have the certifications, they have a bachelor's degree, they have experience with social media and SEO. Any questions so far? Okay. I guess prior to this, did you have any expectations? Did you already know like the costs, or is this a surprise?
I didn't think it would be that affordable. I was expecting at least like 2,500 to 3,000 a month as like the bare minimum to get someone that qualified.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. So time savings, right? I think this is one of the most valuable thing, right? Our time is just so valuable. We can make more money, we can't make more time. So we can delegate, we can start delegating time intensive tasks, administrative work, technical roles, so we can really focus on strategy, sales, and high value activities. Core values is the thing. So what I can share is the values in the Philippines. In general, Filipinos, Asians, they follow instructions, very respectful, and very, very family oriented. Okay. Uh, like it's not, even thought of like, for example, throwing a family member to a nursing home. Whereas in the US, like, okay, well, nursing home first, right? Hopefully my kids will send me to a nice one, right? But not in an Asian, a family focus, right? They'll have their in-laws or their mother, the mom or the grandma, right? Grandpa in living with the family, right? Sometimes even aunts and uncles together. But here are some of the challenges, right? Time zone differences. In the Philippines, it's exactly 12-hour difference. But that's not that big of a challenge. It's fairly normal. And it's accepted because of the big influence of the call centers and BPOs there. So not that big of an issue. Just understand that if you hire talent from the Philippines, they're working the night shift. Compared to Eastern time zone, it is a 12-hour difference. So if you're in Pacific time, it's even further, right? It's like 15-hour difference, right? Communication barrier. English is not their first language. English wasn't my first language, right? But I have the benefit of like growing up and living in the US. But that communication, English, it's a skill, it's a behavior that can be learned. So it takes time, and there's a lot of talent offshore. And some I couldn't even tell that that are outside of the U.S. So you're gonna get all sorts. So I wouldn't say this is a big challenge, but it is, for some that is a slight challenge. So some cultural differences, non-confrontational, right? The extreme end is they would rather quit than to like push back. In the US, the typical American, they would speak up and they would push back, and sometimes they're really like defensive, right? Who experienced that before? Talking to someone that's extremely defensive, like, dude, I'm just trying to help you here, right? Like, don't blow up on me, man. I'm trying to help. So, but the opposite and the other spectrum is, okay, well, I feel like I'm failing. I'm a failure. I'm not, I can't uh, help my leader, my boss. So I'm just gonna quit. So that's that. And the use of honorifics, it's not that big of a deal, but that's one of the habits I have to break immediately is that, oh, they call me Sir David. I'm like, I feel like I'm some sort of knight, right? Like, no, 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 I'm not, don't need to call me Sir David, or, just call me Dave, David, Dave, that's fine. And funny enough, there's roosters in the Philippines. Like, if you haven't, you'll hear it eventually, like a rooster going off. Like, what's going on, right? But that's the thing, right? People have roosters in their backyards. Um, so that's a funny thing, but that happens. And then other things, people love karaoke, and because it's night shift, their neighbors might be blasting Bruno Mars, singing to Bruno Mars next door. Okay. Uh, there's another cultural thing, Filipino time. I remember I took the team at a company trip and I flew the team to Hong Kong one year. And Hong Kong, and it's very similar to New York City, very similar to like LA, really fast paced, right? Um, and everyone else on my team, they're like just relaxing. They're like, hey, just whatever, no big deal. Let's enjoy the scenery. And people are just walking by like crazy, like we got places to go, things to do. But so we call it Filipino time, right? Every culture has their thing. So that's something to consider as you're working with team, like especially in the Philippines or overseas, understanding that their time. Flexibility with rules. Sometimes, like even with certain laws, like let's say for example, traffic, right? Here, for the most part, we follow like the stop signs, the red lights, right? Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But when you go to the Philippines, when you go to other countries, it's more of a suggestion. Oh, red light? Oh, that's a suggestion, right? Just blast right through it. So that is the mindset of, so as the leader, as you're mentoring or hiring your new employee, make it super clear. Like this is not a suggestion. We need to follow these rules. This is very, very important. Holidays in the Philippines, there's a ton of different holidays. Um, Sometimes the government would come up with a holiday. I know it's weird, but they just come up with a holiday like, hey, we are making this an official holiday because what happens is when it's a government holiday, um, the the people, the employees, they get either time and a half or two times pay if it's a designated government holiday. So it's weird, but they do that. There are weather and power and internet outages, but in this day and age, I mean, it's everywhere, right? What's happening in LA, what happened, last year with the hurricanes, near Florida. I mean, we get hit with crazy weather too, but it's no different. But particularly in the Philippines, there's typhoons, there's volcanoes, there's flooding because of that, there's rolling blackouts, and that affects the power grid, right? So as the employer, you just need to be prepared for that, right? Find solutions, build your business model so you mitigate these risks, right? You can't stop a typhoon, but what can you do, right? You can say, all right, well, the work assignments, make sure you have enough leeway. So if we do have some downtime, it's not that big of a concern, right? If there's power outages or issues. There's access to backup systems and backup internet, and it's not that expensive, so you can cover it as an employer. So that way you have more options for your talent. So let me ask everyone here, right? What challenges have you experienced with your offshore talent?
I would say training is probably the biggest thing. And so like having like those like SOPs essentially, and just making sure everything's
Mhm.
detailed enough
Yeah.
for them to, because you have a language barrier and everything else, different cultural differences, and so I feel like you really have to know exactly what you want for it to be successful.
Thank you. Anyone else? And is not, how about this? Let's scratch off offshore. How about challenges with talent? Like challenges with hiring people, right? Local or offshore.
My challenge was, so as a designer, you kind of you feel like you get your clients used to a certain level of quality, and then you
Uh-huh.
bring in contractors and other designers, and the quality isn't there, and like, now I'm sending it under my name, but I'm a little bit embarrassed about
Yeah.
it. So that's been a challenge.
Okay. And to address that, look at what the big accounting firms do. Look at what the big like law firms do. Okay. They have um, staff basically doing all of the technical work, right? The heavy lifting, but there's always like a partner, right? Like the partner that always looks at it. And
Mhm.
and and I want you to imagine yourself as that partner
Mm.
level, right? So your team's doing all that work, but it never gets sent to the client until you're okay with it. And if it's crap, you push it back. Okay. So I
Yeah.
don't know how true this is, but there was a story with Steve Jobs, when they first came out with the iPhone, right? The engineers said to Steve Jobs, "Hey, look, we created this first iPhone." And then he looked at it and said, "I need to make it smaller." And the engineer's like, "There's no way. We can't make it smaller." And he took the phone and he dumped it into the fish tank and said, "You see the air bubbles? There's room. Make it smaller." All right. So, I mean, he's pretty, be pretty aggressive there, but it sends a message, sends a point. So that's part of the holding accountability, right? So when you have a team, when you have contractors, you hold them accountable. If it's crap, don't send it to the client, push it back, I say. But you have to give yourself enough time to review and to approve and for revisions. Make
I'd
sense?
say so that's been a challenge. The point that you bring up is that you have to give yourself enough time because in a lot of cases, by the time that I do decide to hire a contractor, it means that I'm running out of time and I'm unable to
Mm.
complete the thing that I thought I was going to be able to complete, right? So,
Yep. Yep.
I don't expect the first round to be exactly what I needed to be, but there is barely any time for a second round, and so that's been a little bit of a
Yep.
that's been a bit of a challenge is lining up the talent, the contractors early enough so that you do have that buffer for the final, let's say, polishing round of whatever it is that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I look at, even hiring a contractor, but just basically delegating and outsourcing your work as the mindset of an investment, right? Don't wait until, oh shoot, I ran out of time, or I don't. Start with the moment you're quoting a project, right? The moment you're putting together that proposal, build that contractor in, build that offshore talent in, right? And build in that time in the get-go. And when you do that and you keep doing that and you're building that system, yeah, sure. Are you going to make as much money? No, you're not. But who cares? It's not important right now. The important is you not having to do the work, right? So that's kind of my mindset, the way I look at it, right? Because I don't know if you have kids, but now with 3 kids, like I don't have that much time. Like the kids suck up a lot of my time. So I have no choice, right? Alicia, what are your thoughts?
Well, this
You bet.
wasn't my company, it was a company I was working for, but we had
Yeah.
a team in Colombia, and our one HTML guy just sometimes decided not to come to work. And we're like, oh, where's Jonathan? And they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe he's taking a nap or something. And we're like, okay, well, this project was due yesterday and it's on him now. So I guess the
Wow.
challenge of having offshore talent is you can't go knock on their door and find them. It's like they're just not coming in for the day.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And here's my thoughts on that. It's not a offshore talent problem. It's a leadership problem.
True.
Okay. And,
Mhm.
and, and it always goes back, right? If a team member or an employee is not delivering, then it's a leadership and management problem because expectations weren't set up front. Because let's call this person, I don't know, Johnny. Okay. So if Johnny
That
doesn't
was
come
his
into work,
name.
right? Yeah. Oh, no way. It was?
Yeah, Jonathan.
Oh my God.
I like that. Have you worked with him?
I know, maybe, right?
He's notorious in the industry.
I know that Johnny. So yeah, let's say Johnny doesn't come into work once or twice, like hey, or doesn't come in on time. Like, is leadership saying something about it? And is there a warning system? Is there a clear path and clear way of communicating that? And up to a certain point, enough's enough, and Johnny has to go. I'm sorry, you're not a good fit, right? And sometimes it's that it's not even because Johnny is lazy or Johnny doesn't care about the company. It's that Johnny doesn't enjoy the work. Johnny's just getting a paycheck, and at that point, you'll be doing Johnny a favor by letting him go and find other opportunities because you're torturing Johnny and Johnny's torturing you, right? Or your team, right? So I don't want you to think like, oh yeah, because of offshore talent. There's different ways of management and leadership that the traditional way, right? You see you see it on the news all the time, right? Oh, Amazon, bring everyone back in the office. Tesla, bring everyone back in the office, right? It's usually because management, leadership, they are not trained and they don't have the systems built for remote. So because of that, they go back to their old traditional habits, like, oh yeah, I gotta have someone next to me. I need to watch over them, right? Funny enough, like when my wife, she has a typical 9 to 5 job and she has to go into work like 3 days a week. She's like, when we go into work, um, I don't get as much work done because we're chatting about other things, right? So it's not as effective. Usually remote work, when done correctly, when managed correctly, when there's a proper system in place, is actually more productive. So, anyways, thank you for sharing. So some best practices for offshore. So this is a really good segue into that. Hey, Joshua, you nailed it, right? Clear documentation, right? SOPs, step-by-step guides, tasks for video editing or social media posting, email management. Okay? This is define roles clearly. So this is an example of our role blueprint. So every time we're looking to hire for a particular role, we have what we call a job scorecard. So in that job score, our role blueprint, and in that role blueprint, we have three parts. We have the job scorecard. We have the job description, time expectations, and questions to ask. So if you look at job scorecard as basically the first day in class, your professor's letting you know this is how I'm grading you. It's a midterm and a final. Or it's this big project that will determine if you pass or fail. And so in a job scorecard for a role video editor, it would be a KPI might be high quality video production. The KPI is quality of final video output. And how do we measure that? We measure by peer and supervisor reviews and audience feedback. And the target is 90% positive feedback. And the time frame is quarterly. You see, very clear, very detailed on how we're grading someone. So we don't want any ambiguity. We talk about, like job key responsibilities, key competencies. These are our core values. These are the important things that this individual needs to follow. Then in the job description, we take all that and we pretty much convert it into a job description that everyone pretty much sees with some additional stuff like the employment type, the schedule, how we will help you succeed. And then, and then the next section would be time expectations. Like reviewing and organizing footage. It should be 1 to 2 hours per project. Rough cut assembly, 3 to 4 hours per 30 minutes of footage, right? These are not like exact numbers, but the rough estimates to set expectations. For someone that's working for you, they would much rather have something here than a blank sheet of paper. Because a blank sheet of paper means they have to read your mind and they're gambling, okay? They're gambling on hoping that you will like their performance, you will like the outcome, right? And there's no clarity and they don't even know what to strive for. Okay. Uh, imagine doing a race and someone told you, I want you to run. And then and then basically you told someone else, oh, you're actually doing a 5K. So the first person you just told to run, they don't know how to pace themselves. They don't know if they should be sprinting, they should be, walking, right? The other person, they're like, oh yeah, I know it's a 5K. So I need to set my pace so I don't burn, I don't burn out, I don't run out of energy by the end of it. You see? So you have to let the person know like what they're trying to accomplish. And then finally, questions to ask, right? Like for this particular role. So that's a role blueprint. That's before we post a job description, before we get applicants, we internally put all this together to say, all right, this is the type of person that we're looking for. So that's a role blueprint. Reliable hiring platforms. You could always utilize us, but there's online jobs.ph. There's Upwork. Right? I've used that for contractors, but online jobs.ph you can hire directly. These two platforms are more contractual. The big difference between us and the others is that we only place full time and we offer benefits. So they would be W-2 equivalent. So that means they're getting all the health benefits, the tax benefits, and also government and labor protection, right? If as a contractor, they're like, yeah, it's just at will. They get terminated. There's, the SOL. So so that's the one of the big differences between us and others. Now, the path. A question I get asked a lot is like, who should be my first hire? And then what happens after that? So the first hire should be an EA. As a agency owner, your first hire should be an executive assistant. To organize all your tasks, your workflows, start helping you build your SOPs, organize your Notion, organize your project management system, whatever that is. Okay. And and then the second hire should be, or the second two hires should be technical. So if you're running a web design company, it should be web designers, developers. If you're running a video agency, it should be video editors. If you're running, let's say, a social media company, social media managers, right? And my recommendation is you should not hire just one. You want to hire two. Okay, you don't have to hire right away, two at a time, but try to get to your second technical hire as soon as humanly possible. Because look at it this way: you hire your video editor, they get sick. Guess what? You're editing videos again. You're not doing marketing and sales anymore. Okay, you're getting buried again. So it's this vicious cycle, right? So you want to push, get over that hill, and then you have two technical hires. So then even if one gets sick or one goes on vacation, right? Like you want to give your team member some breathing room, then you don't have to worry about that work going back on your plate again. And then the third would be a CSM, which is a customer success manager, kind of similar to a combination of a project manager plus um, a sales rep, account exec, and a support representative, all kind of consolidate into one. Okay. Uh, so CSM pretty much handles the day-to-day operations of your projects. So once you have this team right here, you can 100% focus on marketing and sales. Okay. You can be the face of the company. You can start doing more YouTube content. You can start doing Instagram content. You can do, you can start going to conferences and start being the face of the organization. And as soon as there's opportunity, this is what I do, right? I do the initial consultation, I do the initial call. And as soon as I have a good idea, we have a good understanding, like, yes, our services, our product can be a good fit for you, and it will work. Let's put together a proposal. Boom, I hand it off to my team. My team takes care of the rest. And periodically I jump in and see how things are going, both internally, and I say hi to the client. But if I jump in the actual execution of the technical pieces, I become a hurdle because my team is going that much faster than me now. I can't keep up. Okay.
I
I
have a
can't
question.
outrun 14 people. Yes.
So I totally understand this like order and how it makes sense. But let's say for me, for example, I have like two, well, I guess two, like two and a half clients right now. And I'd
Mhm.
say I'm like pretty organized and I'm putting the processes in place where I don't necessarily need an executive assistant at the moment, but I'm terrible at sales. I hate it. I want to cry every time I have a sales call. So do you ever see a world where it would make sense to like get a salesperson first and then like same with editing. I kind of like editing. It doesn't really bother me that much, but maybe if I had like a I don't know, just for example, like a web person on my team so that when my clients need Instagram and a website, I could kind of do both. So are there cases you see where it makes sense to go out of this order? Or have you found like when people kind of try to do that, it always comes back to like, well, you need an EA or
So
you need to do
yeah,
this order?
that's a wonderful question. Let me ask you this: what kind of agency do you run? What's your agency? What do you offer?
I'm doing just social media right now. So like content
Okay,
days, social media authority funnel.
got it. So with so I'll use more examples, more in particular for your social media agency. Yes, to answer your question, for the technical hires, to hire someone to handle your social content, to schedule it out, to edit videos, you can do that. And you're saying, you're very organized. And I believe it, right? I like to see myself as very organized too, and very structured, and I'm constantly looking at optimizing my time, right? I even have this like Pandoro timer thing, okay, if you know what that is. Um,
Hmm.
so, but here's the thing though, like you said sales. Well,
Like
here's
my
something
first
you,
hire, I would want to be a salesperson, I think.
okay. I'm gonna tell you something
But
you probably don't want to hear.
that I need to do it myself.
You got to do it yourself,
Good.
right? This as a business owner, as the entrepreneur, as the leader, you have to learn to do sales as much as you absolutely hate it, okay? Because even if you hire a salesperson, even if they're very experienced, and if they're that experienced, you do have another option, okay? You could get a partner, business partner to do sales for you. Okay. But if you don't want that and you try to find someone else to do sales for you, it would A, be very expensive, right? Or B, you'll end up having to learn the whole sales process and how to do sales just so you can train the salesperson, right? And then another disadvantage is if you don't learn sales, part of sales is about learning your customer, learning what their pain is, right? Learning what they're looking for. And so if you don't understand the sales piece, then how do you do the marketing piece? That, right? So once you
Hmm.
learn the sales piece, then you can do the marketing. And eventually, here's a benefit. You can get marketing done so well that your sales process is so easy that you actually don't mind it at all. Because let's imagine this, right? One strategy might be you're focused on marketing and you're to the point where you're like influencer level, right? Everyone knows your name. Like, oh yeah, Alicia, yeah, I've seen her on all this YouTube content. It's like the Alex Hormozy version, right? At that point, you're not selling anymore. People are coming to you like, hey, can I buy your product? Can I buy your services? And you basically have one web page and the people are just signing up for that. So now that's your sales process. And at that point,
Hmm.
would you hate your sales process? I don't think
I
so.
guess not.
Right? It's not much of a sales process, right? Because your marketing is so good at that point. So I guess that's option three. You could invest most of your time into marketing and to get it so good that your sales process is super easy and you productize your offer. But the problem still is this baseline sales. And here's the thing, without sales skills, you're going to struggle at certain points in your journey. So not just selling to your current customer base, but negotiations. So let's say you are getting bigger now and you want to expand and you want to start doing M&A, mergers and acquisition. You want to start buying other social media agencies. That's a sales skill. You want to
True.
start looking at talent and you here's another thing. You want to build your team and you want to motivate and encourage your team to develop and grow. That's a sales skill. Because why? You're selling your dream to them. You're selling like the potential. This is what working here is going to be like. That's sales. So that's why like it is a non-negotiable. I hate to break it to you. It's not negotiable. You have to learn sales. You have to do it, right?
So it's almost like hiring someone. Let's say I hire someone right now to sell and get me my third, fourth, fifth client. It's kind of like a band-aid solution because then I have these five clients, then I want to raise
Yeah,
my prices or something, and they say, no, I'm never going to pay you that much. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry because I don't have the sales skills to negotiate.
yeah. I
That's a
when I
good
first
perspective.
started, it was like 2 years into my agency. I hired this senior veteran salesperson. He did manufacturing sales. He was and I gave him a base plus bonuses plus commission, and it just blew up in my face. Ended up spending over 10 grand, okay, on the salesperson. Um, And you know what he said? I still remember this day. And at that point, I didn't understand it. But he said this. He said that you run your agency, you run your business like a frat. Okay. A frat. So I was like, what are you talking about? Right. And I was like, oh man, that's that, maybe he shouldn't have said it that way. And he didn't say it directly to me. He blasted it out in an email with everyone in the company. Okay. And mind you, it was only like 4 or 5 of us, not that big of a deal. And also at that point, we were having meetings at my house. Okay. And we didn't have a big office. It was a tiny little office. So, I just want to let everyone know I started with, at my home, right? Where most people do, right? So I don't want anyone to go through that, what I've been through. I've already spent the $10,000. Okay. So you don't have to. All right. And I've
Hmm.
hired other salespeople that didn't work out. So you don't have to. So what I suggest is read up on some sales books, and really practice. I mean, our course, I mean, actually before that, Gilberto has some great modules, great content on sales. So just practice and practice. After a while, it's not difficult at all. But also in my mind, during sales calls, I look at it from a consulting approach, like a doctor would. I'm trying to save the patient. I'm trying to save someone. I don't want them to die. So it's like if you look at it that way, right? Your social media services is very valuable because it might be a restaurant, it might be a business that has no clue, and they are going to go bankrupt if they don't get exposure, if no one knows about their business. And that's what you're here to do to help, right? So sales is actually
True.
quite
Thank
easy.
you.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Good. Okay. Uh, onboarding process. So kind of related to SOPs, but this is our current iteration of onboarding. And I touched on this last week, but just a high overview. We have 2 documents that whenever someone starts at our organization, we have a general onboarding doc and also a role specific one. And this is an example of a executive assistant and what they go through, and it's 90 days long or 12 weeks long. And the first 10 days is broken out into individual days. And you can see here day 1, and then day 2, and then day 3. And we try our best to not overwhelm the individual, but also letting them know you have a lot to learn, and this is the quickest path and the smoothest path and in the right order, okay, or the best order possible. And so that's kind of how we all, we put it together with a mixture of the general and for role specific. And make sure to invest your time and energy for your hire. Morning. So this is what we do. We have morning meetings, daily meetings, morning and end of day, 2 meetings a day. Okay, for new hires. Maintain an open communication. We use tools like Slack, Zoom, or Asana, or SmartSuite, project management tools. Set very clear expectations and schedule weekly or daily check-ins to ensure alignment. So that's usually after the first 10 days. Then you can set weekly check-ins, and then daily. Usually our new hires would provide an end of the day report on all the things that they completed, and what are the next things that they're going to be working on. Okay. And this is different than like, oh, it sounds like micromanagement. No, it's not. Micromanagement would be like every hour, like I'm asking, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? And I also let the new hires know, I know you want autonomy. Autonomy is a very important thing, especially if you're hiring millennials and Gen Z, right? They want a ton of autonomy, right? And especially, I'm sure everyone here does too. They don't want someone breathing down their, on their backs, right? On their shoulder. They want autonomy. So I say, you're not going to get much autonomy in the beginning, but over time and after 90 days, you're going to have a ton, if not all the autonomy you want. Because at that point, you'll know exactly what to do. And I don't want to butt in. And it'll be quite the opposite. I want you to take ownership of this piece, right? And I want you to run with it. So that's very, very critical. And I emphasize this because time and time again, I've talked to agency owners and I've seen agency and worked with agency owners, like they had to let someone go. It didn't work out. And I ask, how many one-on-ones have you done? How many meetings? Did you set expectations? Did you have those difficult conversations? Did you send out a warning? A warning's not the end of the world. You know what's worse? Firing someone. That's worse, right? When you fire someone, now they don't have a paycheck. They have to find another job. How are they going to pay the bills, put food on the table, right? That's worse. So you as a leader have to make the difficult calls and have those difficult conversations. Another thing is to offer competitive compensation. So we think about, especially contractors, like, oh yeah, it's all about the hourly rate, right? Oh, how much are we making hourly? But there's other things that it's important to an individual, especially individuals with families. There's like in the Philippines, there's Philibig, which is a housing benefit. So if they're looking to buy a house, is a government like program. It would provide them a lower mortgage interest rate. And Phil Health is it's basically like a health insurance, and then a 13-month pay is like a government like bonus that's implemented that's not required for contractors, but is required for employees. And then we offer a health card, like a HMO card, performance-based compensation, training opportunities, flexible work hours, and fixed schedule, and recognition and equipment. Okay. So for example, equipment wise, after 3 months, after their like probationary period, our standard issue is a MacBook Air. So we send out a MacBook, and if they need an extra monitor, if they need a better webcam, mic, keyboard, mouse, IKEA desk or a chair, right? We'll pay for that. Okay. Same thing with training opportunities. If there's a conference, local conference, or sometimes I flew the team out to another island in the Philippines or outside the Philippines for training, I've done that too. Okay. So that's part of the comp. And then another thing, company parties and outings. So this was our last year's Christmas party. So we rented out a big like venue in a five-star hotel. So they have these huge conference rooms. They brought their families. The kids were there. We had the team had a blast. So events, and then you, right, as a company, you as a leader, providing a safe and supportive environment, right? That's another thing to factor in. So real examples of offshore success. So a US agency hired an EA in the Philippines for $7.50, an hour. So roughly, I mean, but we don't really go by hourly rates here. So we convert that. It's essentially around $1,200 a month. It freed up 20 hours a week. Like imagine getting 20 hours a week back, right, on your schedule. And it's for $1,200 a month. Right. Let's see. Video agency, right? This is from one of our agency owners. He asked to hire 6 team members. Ended up being, not immediate, but over time ended up being 6 team members. Transition from solopreneur to CEO. He started a new business, and with the team of 6, he's generating additional 15 to 20K months, of revenue. So you can kind of see like how much you can scale. So now the next section is like common pitfalls and what to avoid, right? I see a lot of agency owners during the recruitment process skipping the important pieces. Like, sure, most just start with the application and then they just do a really, really basic application submission. And then usually there's like over 100 applicants that come in. Then they don't have an assessment, so they skip that, and then they go straight into the Zoom interview. And after that, they're like, okay, the first person that they interview, they hire them, right? So there's still 99 other applicants, or they don't go through all 100 applicants and filter through them, and they just interview like one or two, and they hope for the best. Okay, so make sure you have a really good vetting process. Overloading new hires. I've seen agency owners like, oh my God, like don't hire people when you're drowning. Okay, it's like learning how to swim when you're drowning, right? You wouldn't want to learn how to swim when you're in the middle of drowning or in that situation, right? So it's the same thing with new hires. Don't hire people when you're buried with work. And so when would you actually have time to train the individual and you're just throwing them into the deep end? Sink or swim. Good luck. Right? It's very difficult. Um, and just solely focus on costs, right? I'm always looking to be able to offer more to my own team. So it's not, cost, and eventually the cost of living will increase in the Philippines and on the rest of the world. It's just normal. And it also doesn't mean hiring local is it's a bad option just because it's more expensive. You just have to look at your business model. So when to start, right? When to start hiring offshore? Um, these are the signs, right? You're overwhelmed with repetitive or time-consuming tasks, turning down client projects due to a lack of capacity. You're spending too much time on low-value tasks, like such as like reading emails, managing your calendar, um, creating the rough draft of SOPs, putting together slide presentations, taking meeting notes. These are all like low value tasks that you should not be doing as the president or CEO of your company, right? Clear and repeatable processes are in place. And you don't have to have every single process in place, but you should have a few. So you have a starting point. And then you need specialized skills but you have a limited budget. Okay, so that's when you're ready for offshore. Uh, Also, here's some additional points. You're missing deadlines, struggling to meet client expectations, ready to scale but lack the support to grow. Competitors are leveraging offshore talent successfully, and you're not. Difficulty attracting and retaining local talent, and require more time coverage. Okay. Every single of these bullets I've experienced. Okay. So, what about you? Anyone here experiencing any of these? Yeah. That's life of an agency owner, right? And if you haven't, you will. I'm sorry, you will eventually, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to be torture. So, so I just want to wrap this up. Like this question for everyone. Like, what's one thing that really stood out to you, during the session?
I would say the onboarding process, like the 90 days, I've never seen something so detailed in terms of like being onboarded, even the jobs I've had in my own past.
Yeah, yeah. We wanted to make it as the best we can, and we continue to iterate. Um, so that way there's no confusion, no uncertainty, and it's super clear. And the thing is, because it's so clear, we've also had individuals quit on the first day. Once they saw this, they're like, "Oh, this is too much, man." And and that is okay. And I
I
thank
guess
them
you
for it.
want them to quit on day one as opposed
Yeah,
to get involved
exactly.
a month
Yeah,
later.
I'd rather them quit on day one than day 90.
And $10,000 later.
Yeah, and $10,000 later. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm surprised just how many benefits you include, how many benefits you offer. Some of them I wouldn't even think of.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the stuff I didn't even put on here. Like, for example, in the Philippines, I wish it's like this in the US. There is a mandated, and also in Europe too, right? Mandated maternity leave. So
Yeah.
if a mother has a baby, it's required that the employer continues to pay for that. But in the Philippines, part of that compensation it's already paid into Social Security in the Philippines. So when the mother comes back to work, the Social Security will reimburse some of the pay that the employer has paid out. Or sometimes the employer will say, all right, well, the mother can just take that as a bonus. So, but that is required by law. And so you can see that if it was, if we're offering opportunity to a mother or someone that wants to be, wants to start a family, right? And they have two offers in front of them. They have one offer is contractor work, right? Project by project basis, or even if it's full-time contract work, right? Versus this other opportunity, it's full-time with benefits, um, follows labor laws. There is maternity coverage, right? Hands down. Even if the pay isn't as great, they'll take that because of the benefits alone, right? But we are providing competitive pay, right? So that's better than the contractors actually. So that's the thing, right? And that we're big on building company culture and values. And when your own team doesn't have to stress out about their livelihood, they're going to perform better. They're going to be more creative, right? And innovative. So what else?
Can
Anyone
I
else?
ask?
Yes.
Can I ask one thing? Because I don't know what I missed. Because for some reason I didn't think you were starting. Um, I thought you were starting half an hour later. Anyway, so I don't know if you talked about this or not. But what is the how would you logistically? Because I have some really good people in Tunisia. Okay,
Mhm.
and I actually started building. I eliminated all of my past contractors and started building contractors that I trust in Tunisia, kind of like in preparation of having all of them in one country. Since
Yeah.
we started these sessions, I kind of thought, just optimize it everything in one country. But how would you start? Because I'm assuming at some point you have to get in touch with some lawyer who's based in a country or some accountant
Yep.
to help you manage all of those financials and legal hurdles, to
Yeah.
of employing somebody abroad full time.
Yep.
So
Yep.
would you get in touch with the lawyers and accountants before hiring somebody, or first you draw up contracts and then you get in touch with the accountants and lawyers?
So this is, I guess, I'll share with kind of how it worked for us, and it worked pretty well. Kind of like our path to this point is that in the beginning, our team members were all full-time contractors, technically, right? And I did the 13-month pay. I offered other benefits, and we asked the team to basically file their own taxes, right? It's like hiring a 1099. But then we started looking into how can we offer like W-2 equivalent or basically being employed direct, right? And and one of the things is, yeah, talking. And so mind you, we already have a team, and that by doing it that way, you see that okay, it's worth the investment. It's worth because bottom line wise, I don't know how much of the bottom line increase, but for us is about a 20 to 21% increase, right? Just similar to like 1099 jumping in the US, jumping from a 1099 to a W2, that's about a 20 to 21% increase in bottom line, right? Because you're covering the benefits, you're covering 401k or covering, whatever, all these other things, right? There's a lot of like overhead. So is it worth it? So before you do that, you build a team. That's what I would do, like build a team there, and then start looking into legal stuff, HR, talk to HR experts and lawyers. And then depending on the country, you might need a business partner or someone to partner or a law firm to work with. And then the different entities, you might need to set up a corporation, set up a special small business type. Depends, right? Every country is a little different. And then afterwards, then you start looking at uh, like HR systems. And so, which, we've implemented the HR systems for us. And then also, when you start transferring a lot of money to overseas, then you can't just use like your typical like transfer, like, oh, PayPal is the most expensive, by the way. Don't use PayPal if you can avoid it. There's like Wise, there's other solutions. I'm sure, you have a solution now. But once you get to a certain volume, then you would start looking into foreign exchange, like Forex. Okay. So that's another beast. And then you might need to set up a bank account, in the country, and all that. So it's like steps to this point. But or you could use, there's other services, like for example, it's expensive. There's a company out there called like deal.com, DEEL.com, that basically becomes your employer of record. I think they charge roughly, and the rates, the last time I talked to them about a year ago, they charge about $600 per person, okay, per month, and they would be your employer of record, okay, and then you basically, I mean, you still pay all the benefits and stuff like that, right? You can do that too. I don't know if they have an entity or an office set up in that country, but they might. So that's another option you can look into if you don't want to go through all the, setting it up yourself.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Other questions? I love questions. So if I have the answer, if I can help, happy. That's what I'm here for.
I guess I was kind of wondering, like, you kind of touched on this, but like what laws govern offshore employees? So if I have employees in the Philippines, do I have to give them time and a half for American holidays or for Philippine holidays? And like, how does PTO work? Like, how do I know what laws I have to follow?
Yeah. So you follow the laws of the local country, right?
Okay.
So in the US, we have, certain laws of if you're bringing talent from certain countries, I believe like if you hire talent from Canada, it might be, there's certain US laws that you have to follow that's related to Canada. So you have to be cognizant about these things. You have to know about these things. But when it comes to like, let's say the Philippines, you have to know about Filipino law when you start offering benefits and setting up an entity in the Philippines if you want to go down that route. But if you're hiring contractors, you really are not you don't have to follow those local laws because it's like hiring a 1099 here.
Because they're just
Um,
contractors.
they're contractors, and the individual needs to file their own taxes, need to follow those laws.
Okay. And is there a resource like, you don't know a law is a law sometimes until you get in trouble for breaking it. You're like, well, I would have followed that law if I knew it existed. So is there any resource that you recommend for like for specifically business owners in the US who are looking to hire in the Philippines and want to familiarize themselves with the laws?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one simple way, I mean, it's just really basic, but you can just Google the Philippines law, but also you can use ChatGPT to help you. Now, it's not always perfect, okay?
Mhm.
Because they get it wrong a lot too. So don't
Yeah,
trust
that would make me
ChatGPT.
nervous.
Yeah, don't trust ChatGPT. So also you could reach out to me, you reach out yeah, reach out to me and I'm happy to help you. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm not ready yet. I was just wondering, like, when I reach that point, I'm gonna be like, oh, I wish I asked Dave that.
Yeah. And there's a ton, and even like in the US, right, with all the changes with tax code, right, with Trump going to the office, right? What's that going to happen? What's our 2025 taxes going to look like, right? So we have to keep up with that. So I get where you're coming from. Thank you everyone for your time. I hope you learned a lot, have a clear action plan and have a wonderful weekend.